Before I bring another Paisan on, boy, I'm going to just sit here. Do me a favor. Before Farzetta comes on here, close your eyes just for a moment. Farzi's probably having his espresso right now anyway, so he'll be jacked up on. So just do me a favor. What would Donovan McNabb be thinking after Reid's holding up that third Lombardi trophy? And think to himself, how come I couldn't have capitalized off that guy's genius more? I'm over the fact that you guys fired him. Listen, 14 years, you guys are right. 14 years of not winning anything. I can't think of a coach who's lasted longer at a place that never won a championship. You're all right. I'm not debating that anymore. You're right. But for Donovan McNabb, what do you think he's thinking about Andy Reid right now with Mahomes? Let's bring Marc Farzetta in here. Marc, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing excellent. I'm reminded of Allen Iverson calling Larry Brown when Larry Brown won his first championship and only championship with the Detroit Pistons. And he said, "Coach, it should have been me. It should have been me." And I believe, if I remember correctly, Larry Brown's response was, "It could have been you." So I don't know if that conversation.
Think McNabb has the same.
No.
Do you think he has the same thought process, or do you think he's just one of those guys that goes, "It was Reid's fault"?
Yeah. No, I don't know if he goes that direction. He might go the direction of more the entire front office, not just Andy Reid. I think he does look at himself a little bit, but in terms of like the comparison to Allen Iverson, I think watching those two athletes in Philadelphia and Allen Iverson, in his heyday, I was in high school. So, like that was my guy, man. That was my era.
One of my favorite dudes of all time in sports history's AI.
Absolutely. And watching those two, Allen Iverson, you watch play basketball and you went, this guy, he wants to die on the court, man. This guy, he's going to, amongst the trees, as Mark Zumoff would say, and hard down to the hardwood and all that stuff. And then you watch McNabb, and I always felt that with Donovan McNabb, it was a classic case of, I think he loved the game of football, but I don't think he necessarily loved winning. And more importantly, I don't feel like he ever really hated to lose. And I feel like if they would have surrounded him with more talent earlier on to help him and not just wait for T.O. and then watch that go up in flames, I feel like this team would have went a lot further. And yes, Andy Reid had a big say in that. But in the early days of Donovan, people have to remember it was still the early days of Andy Reid. And Andy Reid didn't have final say always over the front office. So for whatever reason, they felt like it wasn't the right thing to make more talent or put more talent around Donovan McNabb, unfortunately.
Well, let me just put it to you this way. I remember I'm sitting in, I think, a bar somewhere, and when I watched AI cross over Jordan, I fell out of my chair, and the whole place exploded. And I went, "Oh, my God, he just broke Jordan's ankles." I was like, because, yeah, listen, I'll tell you, my relationship with Allen, it goes back to Bobby Bowden. They offered him a scholarship because they wanted him to play at Florida State football and basketball like Charlie Ward did. And they thought he'd have been a perfect fit down there. And then when that whole bowling alley incident happened, everything obviously dried up on him. But Florida State wanted him desperately, man. Wow. They wanted him to play both baseball and they wanted him to play, or basketball and football. They wanted him to play.
Wow. Yeah.
Bobby told me the story. He goes, "Yeah, no, we recruit. No, I met his mom and everything. We had him. We thought we had him, and then things went south." I mean, they also had Randy Moss locked up to go down there too at the same time as Iverson. Imagine those two guys playing at Florida State with Bobby. Anyway,
What a story.
So, real quick here, you're owner of the Sixers, Josh Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to get there. Football, Super Bowl. So he hires Dan Quinn, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you not hire that D coordinator in Kansas City who's won 4 Super Bowls? Schematically last night was one of the most impressive performances by a D coordinator especially the last 2 Super Bowls, and you hire Dan Quinn, and this guy's got 4 rings, and you don't hire him, but you hire Dan Quinn. Is this the process?
It's not the process. It's unfortunately, I think it's the process of the way his brain works. If you're a Commanders fan and you're watching this, Josh Harris, he'll spend money. He won't make the best decisions, but he'll spend money. I mean, he's an investor. The Commanders are supposed to be the team that he's the most invested in, considering it's money and emotion, because he was a Washington fan growing up. But I don't get it. I don't understand it. Dan Quinn is a head scratcher to me. You look at a guy like Steve Spagnuolo, for instance, and what he was able to do last night, and the aggression, the live or die by the blitz. And it wasn't like all out blitzes or anything like that, but it was staying aggressive, corner blitzes here and there, staying aggressive. Timely. If that's not what you want in a head coach, I don't know what it is. If you look at him with all his background and the coaches that he has coached under, you would have to think he got a little bit better since his days in St. Louis with those Rams. So I don't know the thought process that goes into it with Josh Harris, but for me, it is mind-boggling. I don't know if that guy knows 100% how to win elsewhere outside of the Philadelphia 76ers. They've had success, at least in the regular season. He's got a lot of time that he's going to have the Commanders. I don't see them doing much better, but here's one thing. They're not going to be worse than Dan Snyder. I apologize to everybody in the NFC East. The Commanders are going to get better.
Absolutely. When Andy Reid hoisted that Lombardi trophy last night, were you happy or sad?
I was happy, mainly because the thing that could have ruined my night was the 49ers winning that. and I started the show this morning by saying, I am surprised by the amount of joy and, quite frankly, gleefulness I feel at watching the 49ers cry. Like in like a real sense, not just a whining and bitching and moaning type thing, but in like they're really sad, and I am happy that they're sad. Like you shouldn't feel like that. That might make me a little bit of a jerk, but whatever. I basked in that idea, and I laughed my ass off when I saw Fletcher Cox's tweet at Deebo Samuel, basically saying, well, if you know, you know. I found that to be fantastic. I said when the Eagles fired Andy Reid that he was going to win a Super Bowl, that he was in his next job. I felt like Andy Reid in Philadelphia. I think we could all remember our first job. You get stuck in your ways. You get set. You might think you found the right groove, and you stay in that groove. And then you get a little bit of a shakeup, and you went, oh, no, I got to do something different here. And you make adjustments from the mistakes that you learned in the first go-around. I think he was going to correct those mistakes in Kansas City. And he did that. Initially, he delegated a lot before he started taking on a lot more of that responsibility. He had the leeway of a Patrick Mahomes, which we all know. He surrounded himself with really good talent like he did here in Philadelphia. The first thing he did was hire Jim Johnson as his defensive coordinator, so that was a smart move. Then he goes out there and he brings in Steve Spagnuolo, as we know. He had Eric Bieniemy there helping. Doug Peterson was helping him there on the sidelines as well for some years. So all that was great for Andy Reid. I am happy for Andy Reid because in his time here in Philadelphia, the guy that was away from the podium was a totally different guy than we saw at the press conferences. If you ever got a one-on-one opportunity with him, you really liked him, and I really liked him. And I have been snubbed at those Andy Reid Eagle press conferences a number of times by him, but that's just the way he wanted to handle reporters at the time. I have a bigger problem with Andy Reid, the motivator, and I have a bigger problem with Andy Reid, the personnel director, than I do more so Andy Reid, the head coach. And I feel like he corrected a lot of those mistakes when he went into Kansas City, and that's why he's been able to have the success there that he wasn't able to get here in Philadelphia.
Mark, that's a great observation, because like when you were talking about, especially in our business, when you get into our business when you're younger, you think you know everything, and you think it's all you, and you think you can do it. You're so more of a micromanager. And as you get more experience, hey, I'm just a small pebble in this thing. I need a bunch of really good people around me for me to be successful. And if I don't have a team around me, there's no way I'm going to get it done. And I think that applies to coaches too. And I think that's why a lot of coaches in their first go around, like Mike Shanahan or others, a lot of the guys struggle initially because like look at Vermeil. Even Vermeil was a better coach in St. Louis than he was when he was in Philadelphia, because he knew he had to back up a little bit. He knew he had to allow Charlie Army and all them guys to find talent for him. And he knew all those guys. And he looked at March and said, you run the offense, I'll help here. So I think that's a great observation, that you get more patient, because that thing last night was an exercise in patience last night if you're the Chiefs.
Absolutely. The crazy thing is, I felt like watching last night's game, and Andy Reid wasn't really known for a great creative play calling or play design when he was here in Philadelphia.
It was brilliant.
It was last night was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And I'm watching this and I'm going, the 14 years that I watched Andy Reid in Philadelphia, I don't recognize this. This isn't the same. And maybe it's because we've been, I hate to use the term, but dumbed down a little bit with the offensive game plan and execution and play calling that we saw in this past year with the Eagles. Maybe it just seems like it wasn't even chess versus checkers. Like, I know people love it. This was
that game winner, Mark.
Yeah, this was a
game winner when he put the guy in motion. The guy steps down. Automatically, when I looked at it, I went like this: touchdown. It's over.
It was when you saw the corner look into the backfield to follow the motion. I went. They did the same thing against the Eagles last year in the Super Bowl. The play they call corn dog. I think Andy Reid, I think, called the play. Yeah, this was corn dog, but this was corn dog with extra mustard and ketchup or something like that. So whatever. But they scored the touchdown. But I'm watching it, and the old adage of chess versus checkers came to mind, and I just went, hold on a second. This is addition versus calculus. Like, it's not even chess and checkers. It's what the Eagles were doing, what the Chiefs did last night, and even in a lot of ways what the 49ers were able to do as well. It wasn't even chess and checkers. It was addition and then calculus. And the Eagles have a lot of catching up to do, and hopefully, obviously, Kellen Moore is the guy that'll be able to do that.
I just look at it and I think when I look at Kansas City and I look at the Eagle coaching staff, even with these new guys, it's like a universe in difference, in distance. It's just, I mean, okay, so we're going to have a wholesale change, and supposedly this is going to be the Band-Aid that's going to fix the offense and Jalen Hurts. And after watching that thing last night, the Spagnuolo timely blitzing, the way that they became so good in the second half. You know, what got me about Shanahan, and I'll tell you, I think he does a great route tree. I think he does a great designer of plays. But here's where he gets in trouble. Mark, like in the NFC title game last year, blocking Haason Reddick with a tight end. Or with a back. And then last night, not blocking Chris Jones and just letting him run free in a critical situation where they need to move the sticks. It just never seems to match up, like his blocking schemes and and again, Mahomes is a magician. He's just a magician, so I got it. Look, you had Purdy, and he didn't play horrible, but he needed to be exceptional to beat that football team and that coaching staff. I mean, that thing last night, if there was any year to beat them, it was now, because I'll tell you what, next year and the year after, they're $25 million under the cap, Mark. They're going to get a wide receiver in there, and God forbid they get somebody in there that's a qualified wide receiver. They're going to kill people.
One of the things that stung the most was a lot of things that were said about the Kansas City Chiefs were said about the Eagles up until the point the Eagles were 10-1, but the Eagles were at least 10-1. The Chiefs, they had losses to show for why they weren't the same team.
Lost to the Raiders.
They lost to the Raiders. So you look at those, you look at the comparison for a second. And even though the Eagles, they found a way to win. They eked it out. They're 10-1. Now they got to prove themselves against the 49ers and Dallas Cowboys. And those obviously turned out to be epic fails. But as you watch the Chiefs throughout the year, it was a lot of the same things. Like, they're not the same team. They were showing the losses, but they're not the same team that was in the Super Bowl. They're not going to get back. They don't have the magic this year. And it felt like that in a lot of ways, despite just the one loss, that the Eagles were in that same category. The Eagles showed them their true selves towards the end of the season. The Chiefs showed their true selves towards the end of the season, and especially in the playoffs. They started shifting more to the run. Their receivers became somehow magically more sure-handed. And when they needed to rely on the magic of Patrick Mahomes in clutch situations and the steady tenacity of their defense, and obviously the receiving core of Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce, they were able to do that. And those are the three components that they rode, that and good coaching and play calling, Those are the three components. They rode to another Super Bowl victory. And I said, if they beat the Ravens, they're going to win the Super Bowl. If they beat that Ravens team on the road, they're going to win the Super Bowl. And throughout the game, maybe at the time Patrick Mahomes threw the interception coming out of halftime, I thought, other than that moment, I felt that the Kansas City Chiefs were going to win that Super Bowl. And sure enough, as we all know how it ended. But watching Patrick Mahomes in that offense and watching that defense go to work, it was just a matter of coming up in the clutch moments on both sides of the football. And that ultimately, as you know more than anybody did, that separates the men from the boys more than anything.
You know, I was talking in the first hour, and I threw this out. Boy, I tell you, I was watching Mahomes last night, and boy, did that not look like 2022 Jalen Hurts. And, you know, it's not that he's a dual threat, but you even heard Romo in the game go, they're running design plays now, and they're putting design runs in there that they hadn't done all year because, hey, this is the Super Bowl. And I was thinking to myself, look at what a chameleon this guy can be. Look at the play calling Andy's doing. Look at the non-analytics. Hey, we have to loosen up the linebackers, bring them back home more, and they're wide open lanes so that, get this, the 49er linebackers, instead of dropping back in zone where they were covering up all them zones in the first half, had to move up closer to the line of scrimmage because they had to be concerned about his running. 66 yards, 333. It's almost exactly what it looked like with Jalen Hurts last year, and yet this year I saw none of that. And Jalen Hurts can't win in the pocket alone. Jalen Hurts has to win like Mahomes won last night. That's what stops teams like San Francisco. That's what makes San Francisco's linebackers with cement in their shoes. I'm concerned, Mark, with Kellen Moore that, you know what, I think they're just going to try to make a better version of 23 instead of the better version of 22, and they're going to get further away from it. Just my concern that you don't think they're running the ball more next year, do you?
No.
This coming season?
No, but I think it's very simple. The Eagles need to do something they said they were going to do going into this past season. And I thought it was a brilliant way to put it. And I heard it from Nick Sirianni, and I went, before the season started, I think it was in training camp, and I listened, I went, that's brilliant. That's exactly what you need to see. And what he said was, we need to embrace the uniqueness of Jalen Hurts' game. And I said, that's the perfect way to put that, because that means in situations where you need to run the football and maybe have an RPO and he keeps it and he takes it for 10, 15 yards, whatever the case may be, he's going to do that. It's not going to be too often. It's not going to be too few. It'll be just right. If you need him to throw the ball downfield to an open receiver, you have him throw the ball. Embrace the uniqueness of his game. I didn't feel like they did any of that. I don't know if Jalen Hurts, my personal opinion is he was not healthy enough to embrace the very unique part of his unique game, which is his legs. But in situations like you saw last night, I thought Jalen Hurts, I had the same thought you did. I thought Jalen Hurts could do a lot of those same things in terms of running the ball if you give him those plays to do it. And it was such a brilliant thing. Last night, the 4th and 1, where Patrick Mahomes kept it and ran it for 8 or 9 yards for the first time. The big conversion of the game.
Huge.
I watched that play, and I went, oh, this is the play to Kelsey where he runs out into the flat and they get a couple of yards first down. And then I went, oh, Kelsey's covered. And I went, oh, this must be the shovel to Pacheco. Was not the shovel. And as soon as I thought that, Mahomes breaks it upfield for the first down. And I went, that has not happened. I have not seen that play. This is why, people always talk about not putting things down on film. You never know we could need it later. That was the perfect time to unveil that. And I had never seen them run that play before. And then you have another 25-yard scramble later in the game in overtime with Patrick Mahomes. And it reminded me in a much lesser game, but just like to understand that Patrick Mahomes has that gear. Patrick Mahomes has that uniqueness to embrace, as we all know, in his game. They had the game against the Jets where they were struggling to get things going and seal the deal. And next thing you know, Patrick Mahomes breaks one up the field for, I think it was 25 yards as well. So he has that in his arsenal. They very rarely remind you of it. And true, you don't need to, because the guy can make every single throw from anywhere on the field.
But
and
they needed to last night, Mark.
They needed to last night. They broke the glass, and behind it was that emergency play.
Absolutely. All right. Without leading the witness, this Haason Reddick thing.
Yeah.
He's been given reportedly permission to seek a trade. What's your take on this?
The writing was very much on the wall. I mean, other than the 49ers last night saying they didn't know what the hell the rules were in overtime, you very rarely hear players be this honest or as honest as Hassan Reddick was.
You think they got it confused with the college rule that most of those guys assumed? No. My wife even goes. She goes, "Isn't that the head coach's responsibility to remind you and walk through in case this thing gets to an overtime?" It was a pick'em game almost, and I go, "Yeah, it is." She's like, "I mean, you should know the rules." Like, especially in overtime, your coaches constantly go over shit like that. And I'm like, no, maybe Shanahan didn't know.
Eric Armstrong said he read it off the scoreboard. They're going out there for the coin toss overtime, and he's looking up at the scoreboard, and he's like, wait a minute, hold on a second. Hold it, guys. You guys,
yeah, we can get a shot.
We both get the ball. There's no walk-off opening possession touchdown. What the hell's going on here? So that was hilarious. But sorry, I digress.
That's all good.
Hassan Reddick and those players last night being honest about not knowing the rules. Hassan Reddick, the same week A.J. Brown finally addressed the media, which I believe was after the Cardinals game, I think it was.
Think so.
Hey, that was Tuesday, I believe. Wednesday, Hassan Reddick is at his locker, and he's answering questions. And this is how I knew that this wasn't going to end well. They're asking Hassan Reddick about being dropped back in coverage 7 times, more times than he ever had as an Eagle. And he laughs. It reminded me of Bryce Harper laughing at Gabe Kapler's curveball machine, for those that remember that. And I went, oh, damn, he's laughing at how they're utilizing him. That's not good. He's at least snickering at it. And then they asked him about, the confusion on the field. And it was Jeff McClain of the Inquirer who asked the question. He said, it looked like there was a lot of miscommunication between defensive players going on and off the field. Is that because of a new coordinator, basically? And Hassan Reddick looked at him like, oh, damn. He noticed that? When he watched the All-22, he noticed how late we were getting on and off the field time and time again. And he went, yeah, with a new coordinator, there's different terminologies. He's calling different things, and we all got to be ready for it, and that's on us. But it's, the higher-ups wanted to make a change, so here we are. And I stepped back, and I went, damn. The higher-ups, not the coaching staff, Sills, the higher-ups wanted to make a change. So he's laughing at how he's being utilized. He is pointing out the different terminology of a coach that is now taking over play calling when there wasn't supposed to be a big difference. This is still the Eagles defense. We've been running it all year. But yeah, as you and I had talked about before, but now you got a different cook in the kitchen. Your entree is coming out a little bit different now. And then you talk about the idea of the higher-ups making the change. Not the coaching staff, not Nick Sirianni, the higher-ups. So for me, I thought that was a player being insanely honest, and we rarely ever get the opportunity. So I don't think it was any shock that he's not happy here. I don't think it's any shock that the Eagles are open to allowing him to seek that trade, and maybe they find a bidder that, oh, yeah, we really want him, and maybe they give you a little bit more. That rarely ever happens, but we'll see. But, yeah, certainly the writing was on the wall after that press conference he had.
How much of an influence do you think Fangio was in that decision not to have him back?
I find it odd, very odd, because we all know quarters and 4-man fronts. Like that's what you're going to have with Vic Fangio. So
he's limited though, Mark.
Yeah, you're not going to Fangio or Reddick.
Reddick's limited. He's not a good tackler and can't cover. It's an abortion watching him cover anyone.
No, I agree with that. But at the same time, he is one of the best in the league at doing what he does well, which is get after the quarterback.
If he doesn't, he's a liability on the defense.
Absolutely agree. But if you're not going to be blitzing often and you at the most are going to have 5-man rushes, I think I'd like Hassan Reddick to be one of those 5 guys going after the quarterback.
At $20 million?
$20 million, steep, very steep, but he is one of the best in the league to do it. That was the only thing that jumped out and went, interesting. All right. But this is the second thing. So you mentioned Vic Fangio in terms of, Hassan Reddick, not in terms of not a great tackler, not a great cover linebacker, all that stuff, or outside rusher, whatever. One of the things that people don't talk about enough, the lack of blitzing, sure. The quarters defense, absolutely. Passive in some sense, sure. But one of the things I remember about most Vic Fangio defenses especially his time in San Francisco. And I was out in San Francisco a lot. They were on with Jim Harbaugh and Vic Fangio. They were on Sunday Night Football a lot. I was out there a lot for those games, ISOing players and all that stuff. And I'll never forget the immediacy of the tackle in a Vic Fangio defense.
Control and contain and keep everything underneath.
It was masterful. It was absolutely masterful. And listening to some of the Dolphins players talk about Vic Fangio, not from the Omar Kelly piece that came out where they didn't get along and all that stuff, but going back and watching the in-season Hard Knocks, like I was watching those guys talk about it, and they're like, look, people run he designed his own defense. Now other teams in the league run his defense. We know it all too well in Philadelphia, but the discipline that's there, and then the freedom once you understand the notes of the song. You can improvise as a corner, as a safety, as a linebacker under Vic Fangio's defense, because once you understand the philosophy behind it, you can start to do a lot of things on your own that are within the realm of that defense. And that's what the players were talking about that they actually liked. It's not as strict as some other people make it out to be, but once you have that freedom, you can do a lot more things to become a playmaker on that defense. And if you take advantage of that, then you're going to have a lot of success, and you might get the name Pro Bowl next to your name. So that's something that I actually look forward to. But to go back to the discipline, that's something I don't think enough people talk about. And watching the end of the season, watching James Bradbury try to tackle, I don't think that's going to fly in the Vic Fangio scheme. It goes beyond quarters and a lack of blitzing. It's the overall discipline and mentality and soon to be freedom that some of these defensive players will experience.
Well, I'm going to bring something up to you here that Tony and I were talking about last week. And I suggested this. Since you brought up Bradbury, in November, the Eagles and the 49ers contacted the Denver Broncos for Patrick Surtain. And the Broncos, after June 1, are cutting Russell Wilson. That's what's being reported, to get out and move him. They're going to need draft choices because they lost first rounders in the Russell Wilson deal and in the Sean Payton deal because they had to compensate New Orleans with a first round pick. So they need picks to rebuild at that position, the quarterback position. Right now, you're picking at 22. The best lockdown corner in the National Football League is Patrick Surtain, and he's on a rookie deal. And he's got an option that you could pick the option up also to give you some latitude. Can you imagine if you're sitting there with Slay and Patrick Surtain as your corners? You kind of solidify your cornerback position. And we know this, Howie has been pathetic is not a word that really would be something that would be an overstatement when it comes to selecting corners. He's been pathetically awful there at that position.
Yeah.
Why not go there and give up a draft pick that could be, you're getting the guy. He's 24. He's on a rookie deal. He's going to be the best corner. You're going to have to pay him, absolutely. However, you're paying these other guys almost the same salary that you're going to have to pay him. Why not make that move 2 ones this year, next year for him? And if you think you're that good, you're going to be picking at the bottom of the draft anyway. Why not go and get the best corner and you fix your back end problem overnight and pick the option up? It's an $18 million option. Why not? You're going to go in the draft and get Kool-Aid McKinstry versus Patrick Surtain.
Look how excited we are over Keely Ringo having a couple of good games. That should tell you everything. That's not a knock on Keely Ringo.
Wait, I'm going to do it to you, Mark. Keely Ringo, Patrick Surtain.
Yeah.
Kool-Aid McKinstry, Patrick Surtain. It's like calling Mahomes and Brock Purdy. There's a different in the, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
The scale's not even here.
Yeah. 24 years old, rookie deal, and no one, look, of all the things you say about Howie Roseman, the guy can manipulate the hell out of that cap.
And he has contacted him.
Yeah. If the wheels are already in motion, which they are, in terms of a couple of years ago, having that opportunity to make a deal. I think it would make a lot of sense as of right now with the Eagles, especially with the way James Bradbury was a drastic disappointment this season, to make that move and bring in Patrick Surtain. If you have Patrick Surtain on this team at 24 years old and you're using 2 first-round picks, and as you pointed out, when you look at those 2 first-round picks, you have to consider where the Eagles are going to be. And I still consider them to be a team that's going to bounce back next year and be pretty damn good and be picking 25 to 32 again.
You're talking 25 and 3rd to 32.
Yeah. So that for me is a deal worth making if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. It has all the right things.
So your 31st pick was Nolan Smith this year.
Yeah.
I mean, we're trying to make those picks, and they are valuable. I'm not saying they're not, but what I'm saying to you is that, okay, well, these picks, they're valuable, but you're not landing on them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, Jordan Davis is not the 13th pick in the draft. Now, Jalen Carter is the 2nd pick in the draft. You got that right.
Mm-hmm.
But Nolan Smith was signed, you know why? So that they could threaten Haason Reddick. When that guy, it kind of gives Reddick leverage going, you're going with him? Good luck to you, kid. I want to see that work because that's where he is now. Nolan Smith is the replacement. It's scary kind of in a way if you think about it. That's their best pass rusher.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, that guy Surtain makes so much sense because it's a rookie deal, and you have the option, the 5th-year option that you could pick up on it to give yourself some time because you have Landon Dickerson to sign and you have Devontae Smith next year to sign. You're going to have to make some tough decisions here. Are you keeping AJ? I love everyone going, yeah, the magician, Harry Roseman, will make it work. We're a $50 million quarterback and 2 $25 million wide receivers are on the same team. Show me a place in the league where that exists.
It doesn't. Just look at the Kansas City Chiefs right now. And look, they won because of their defense, and they got the greatest quarterback I've ever seen play the sport. So for me,
$1 million on their running back.
It's unbelievable. Oh, look at the Eagles. They get rid of Miles Sanders, and they signed 3 different running backs that are all making less than him, like in combined. That you want to talk about wizardry? That's pretty impressive. But yeah, when it comes to the wide receiver spot and the top billing, the top money, yeah, it's going to be hard to pull off with a quarterback already making top money.
What do you make of the new coordinator hires?
Vic Fangio, I know everyone wants to talk about we've seen we talked about it before. I liken it too. We've seen the cover band. Now we get to see the original act. So that's my Vic Fangio take. And the discipline, that's what I love. And the defenses and seeing what players, the wide variety of players that have come out and been in support. Simmons out there in Denver as well, Surtain being one of them also. I think those are all guys that you could kind of trust their opinion, and they all had wonderful things to say about Vic Fangio. The staff they're putting him around as well, great things to say about Vic Fangio. The Kellen Moore thing is interesting because, look, let's not forget that this was still hard to mess up, but somehow the Eagles messed it up. But by year's end, they were still a top 10 offense when all was said and done. Now, towards the end of the year, they certainly weren't a top 10 offense. But Brian Johnson had no play calling experience. Brian Johnson had a personal relationship with his MVP caliber quarterback from a previous year in Jalen Hurts. Nick Sirianni is not a play caller. Him getting less power as his career has gone on is troubling, but it's hard to mess up if you're an offensive coordinator. If you're coming in here with 5 years of experience under your belt, like Kellen Moore, and on the other side of the football, 20 years of experience as your defensive coordinator in Vic Fangio, you're at least in much better hands just in terms of experience. Now, let's talk about success. Vic Fangio has had top defenses in the NFL. Kellen Moore has had top offenses in the NFL. If you were to tell me at the end of last year, before we really knew what was what and who was coming in, and you would have told me that you were going to absolutely get experience, and it wasn't just going to be guys from the good old boy network that have just been around a long time, like a Billy Davis, for instance, okay? But a guy that actually had success, I'm jumping on that. I want to see that. Kellen Moore, Vic Fangio both bring that to the level to Philadelphia. And that's what I'm excited to see. It's going to be hard to mess it up for Kellen Moore because you have these offensive weapons. You have this great offensive line. With Kelsey or without, I still think there's going to be one hell of an offensive line in the upcoming season. This should be an easy fix. Little creativity, little comfortability with your quarterback, getting him in good situations, doing the thing that everyone scoffs at, but it's so true because we saw the opposite happen this year. Every single game here, we got to do a better job putting our players in a better position to make plays. You rarely saw that last year. I just want to see my quarterback look comfortable in the pocket. I want to see my quarterback more consistently climb the pocket. And getting back to what we started talking about, I want to see the Eagles embrace the uniqueness of Jalen Hurts' game. Allow that to happen. And Kellen Moore should have an easy time doing that because he's got such talent there on the offensive side of the football.
Well, the only way I say that this works is when you get rid of Spider Rico, your coach. Until you get rid of Spider Rico.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say this to you, Mark. So let me ask you this. So when they're putting the plays together Saturday night, and they're putting the game plan together, they get into a game on Sunday, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the football game, they want to run one of those Andy Reid type plays. And all of a sudden, you got your boy on the sidelines there, Sirianni, going, no. I mean, are you more concerned about the relationship between Kellen Moore and Jalen or the relationship between Kellen Moore and Nick?
Neither. I am more concerned about the relationship between Kellen Moore, Howie Roseman, and Jeffrey Lurie, and then Nick Sirianni. Because
okay, so now you got this guy as a doorman. All right, I'm just curious. Okay, I'm with you.
I mean, look, people made last time I was on with you, people made a big deal. I was making the point about a lack of play call. It's not just that Nick Sirianni isn't calling plays. It's not just that he's not calling plays. Like people talk about John Harbaugh and they talk about all these different coaches and everything.
Todd Duncan.
Dan Campbell. Yeah. Like it's not hold on a second. Those guys didn't start out their head coaching careers by I'm calling plays, here we go. And then all of a sudden, oh damn it, you do it. And then you push it off to Shane Steichen. You get to the playoffs, right? All that stuff. And then the next year you go to the Super Bowl, and that was pretty great. And then Shane Steichen's gone. And Jonathan Gannon's gone. And then you bring in someone who has never called plays before, and you still deem him more worthy of calling plays that he's never done it. You've at least done it. Not for you. And then the end of the year press conference happens, and for the first time throughout the entire season, he's Nick Sirianni is talking about my offense. This is my offense. Brian calls the plays. Blame me, my offense. And then for the first time ever, we hear Nick Sirianni not have ownership, not full ownership of the offense. He talks about how it'll be our offense. Lame. It's like when you have an older brother and you finally turn 16 and it's like, oh no, it's not my car, it's our car. And your older brother's like, no, dude, it's my car. I'll let you borrow it sometime. Like that's how it goes. And you look at this Eagles offense right now and you wonder who has the ownership. It's Kellen Moore. So the role of Nick Sirianni has decreased. His responsibility has decreased. And I have no doubt in my mind that he had the same push come to shove moment that Doug Peterson had with this, with Jeffrey Lurie saying, hey, here's my plan. This is what I want to do. And with Doug Peterson, Jeffrey Lurie said, no, I don't want to do that. And Doug's like, I got a Super Bowl on my resume. Deuces, I'm out. And he was out. Nick Sirianni did not have that Super Bowl victory on his resume. Here's what I want to do. Lurie said, this is what I want to do. All right, whatever you want to do, boss. Nick Sirianni sticks around. And now he has less responsibility than ever. So I know a lot of people flocked to the question of what is it you say you do here? What is your role? The actual question. Quote, Tim McManus, ESPN. So what is your role going to be with the team? Odd as all hell that a head coach gets asked that question. But when you're talking about a diminishing responsibility, it's a totally valid question. So when you talk about offense, it's Kellen Moore's offense. Nick Sirianni, I assume, will have some game planning assistance, but overall, he will be, I hate even saying the term CEO because that seems like it's too glamorous. He's the managing coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. And everybody else is going to have final say over their department, offense and defense. Are you
calling him a glorified quality control coach?
I'm not going to go so far as to say he's sharpening pencils or queuing up tape.
Hey, go get me 3rd and 6.
No, look, here's the biggest thing. So if Nick Sirianni isn't calling plays, if he isn't in charge of the offense anymore, then he's got to be the motivator. So here's the problem, okay? Where was the motivation at the end of the season? All the players, God bless them, they all said great things about how great Nick Sirianni is. That troubles me even more considering the effort and execution and lack of both of those things at the end of the season. So if he's not going to be the motivator, if he's not going to be the brilliant game planner, what is he doing? Is he going to turn it around in year 2? Or excuse me, with 2 different coordinators?
let me stop you there because here, I'm going to show you this. So Britton Covey reached out to me.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Because I ripped him a new one. Because I told him, I go like this, I go, how long before you walk this one back too on me? And, he goes, hey, I don't want to do this. And I showed everybody this. I got to be careful here. Let's see here. That's Darius. Hold on here. So I'm really happy that these guys are reaching out to me here. And so that's Trent. Hold on. Not him. I got all these.
How many people are reaching out to you?
Dude, a lot. Darius Slay does. Trent Cole goes, what's going on with me? Everybody hates me here now. All of a sudden, I'm like,
oh, yeah, that thing,
that's a good look, kid. Anyway, so he sends me, I don't want to do this in public. So he gives me his phone number. He calls me over the weekend. He goes, look, he was in Vegas for like Radio Row. I go, dude, you said that the coach lost complete control basically of the football team. And you don't think you play for the Eagles, kid. I mean, if you were talking between two styrofoam cups in a string, they're going to pick that shit up in Philly and they're going to put that thing everywhere. It doesn't matter where and who you're talking to. Well, it should and I said it should because somebody's going to set you up for some shit like that and walk you down the road. And there you were going, yeah, at the end, we just, the players and the coaches weren't on the same page. This is kind of the stuff that Barrett said earlier that he walked back on my program, and now he wanted to walk it back again. And I'm like, look, I know you're a special teams guy. You can't get over your skis. I get it. You're not A.J. Brown. But I believe that there's in that room, man. I think there's just a disconnect, and I think there's a trust factor between the coaching staff because they know the front office runs all decisions and all personnel. And Mark, no matter who you put in as coordinator, how does it matter when you know your coach has no autonomy in the building?
What sank the ship was the change at defensive coordinator. I have no doubt in my mind. Clay Harbor.
Is this new, Mark? Did you guys always believe that there was some type of? It's not a rip on the Philly media, but I'm asking because when I first started talking about the Eagles, there was a belief, and there's still belief, that Nick has some say in the hires of these coaches. I never believed it. From day one, I never believed it because when I heard him at the Super Bowl, during the press conference, he goes, hey, I had to introduce myself to 75% of the staff. Right there, I knew he didn't pick any of the coaches.
Yeah.
He didn't pick any of them. So how could he bring a culture in, and how could he have hired these guys when he didn't know them? So I'm like, but there's still people that believe Nick has the pulse of the locker room. I'm like, that guy has the pulse of nothing. I mean, he doesn't even know. This guy's got the pulse himself of a grapefruit. I said, there's not a chance he has the pulse of anything. Do you think the problem in that room is because the players know that he's a yes man for those guys upstairs?
I don't think until the change in with defensive coordinator, I don't think until then they were aware of it, but I don't think they were even aware of how much power the front office had on the locker room, not just in terms of signings and additions, but Nick coming out and saying time and time again that, that we're going to get through this together. We're going to figure it out. We're all going to get in the room and that whole thing. And for Hassan Reddick to come out and let everybody know what happened, I feel like your head coach was neutered in front of your team. You blamed your defense despite the fact that you were 10-1 at the time, 10-3. And then you told your entire locker room that your head coach is a pushover, essentially, and you made a change at defensive coordinator. That, to me, showed the entire locker room that your head coach. How am I going to play for a guy that doesn't have any real power?
So all the whispers, Mark, about Doug have been kind of validated this past season on the arguments that went back and forth because from what maybe correct me if I'm wrong, there was a Doug camp and then there was an Eagle camp where, hey, these two guys just didn't see eye to eye at the end, plus Wentz was in the middle of this whole thing. But to me, it really came down to what Seth told me. Hey, man, Doug kicked the can down the road because if I can't hire my own assistant coaches, I mean, you want to put the personnel in. All right, Howie, that's your department. But my department should be hiring my own coaches. And if I can't do that, I'm going.
Yeah.
And to me, that goes to what that Cliff Kingsbury. Here's what I heard. Cliff Kingsbury, they had 2 interviews, and they loved him. One in person, and one, I guess they had one when they had a Zoom. They had a Zoom one. There was two interviews. It went great. I know the agent for him. When it got to money, they were kind of like, okay. Then they went to years, and then they went to this. Hey, I want to bring this guy in and this guy in.
Yeah.
Because he was an RPO kind of guy. Because look at the quarterbacks, Mahomes and Kyler Murray. He's more of an RPO guy than what Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore's never worked with an RPO guy, but he has. And when he started talking about assistants, that's when the Eagles hedged. So at the end of the day, are they still picking the assistant coaches? Or are they allowing Kellen Moore to make these assistant coaching hires? It just doesn't seem that they are.
I think that they have certain guys that they want to stay. Jeff Stoutland is one of them. They might have guys that are more or less protected. Hey, look, we're really happy with what this guy does here. Can you work with him? Great. Then here you go. You can choose these people, and we'll talk about it. Those kind of things. That's what I believe. That's how that's been explained to me. That's how it goes down behind the scenes. Where the Eagles will, of course, in the front office with Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, have input. I do think they at least run it by Nick Sirianni, but ultimately they give him some guys that these are the people we want to stay on this staff.
So
I think Kellen Moore works with that.
They set the deck. They go, here are 20 guys we like. Which guy do you like?
Pretty much. They deal the cards, and they say, here's 2. You can pick the other 3. That's pretty much how that goes.
Isn't that slick how you can be told, watch this, Nick picked the coaches. Yeah, off the sheet you gave them.
Yeah, right. We've dialed it down. You have 2 coordinators,
so
2 choices.
Nick picked the coaches. Yeah, off the 20 guys I gave him.
Right. It reminds me of Howie Roseman and Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas, who is it that he fell in love with? Oh, who was it I can't remember the specific player, but it was a first round pick too. But Joe Douglas came in the room and said, "Hey, what do you think of this guy?" And Howie Roseman pulls out a piece of paper and goes, "He's right there. That's what I think of him." And it's like, I would hope a month before the draft, the general manager of a football team would have a first round pick's name in his office. Makes no sense. But that's where they're at. But to your point, I do believe they present a sheet, a list of names that say, choose from these guys. These are the guys we feel like we can work well with.
I told you this before. If Sirianni was the navigator on the Pinta Maria or the Santa Maria, Columbus would have turned the damn boat around. Okay? I mean, and they'd have threw his ass over. There's no way you're going to sea with that guy. Not a chance, Mark. I mean, And you know what? I know you and I hate this because you know why? It's Italian on Italian. And it's not something that we appreciate and something that we love because we always back Italians. Like my good friend Tone, he's a paisan as well as far as I'm concerned. And so I look at it like this. I go, this is always awful when you have to go after an Italian. But I'm sorry, man. You're not qualified.
Well, the word vendetta isn't an Italian word for nothing.
Go have an espresso, my friend. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mark.
Great catching up as always, man. See ya.
You got it. Marc Farzetta, man. I love talking with my paisan brother. Fantastic. Make sure you check him out, too. He's here on our channel here on JAKIB. We really appreciate him. Please hit the like button. Keep it here on the National Football Show.